Hi there, I'm just going to do a review / analysis of the Cold Steel Polypro training weapons I have. I've learned a lot since buying them, and I just wanted to go over a general encompassing kind of buyer's guide. When I bought these, I didn't know a lot about swords or training weapons in general, but I'd like to start with the cons. This is going to be predominantly negative because there's not a super lot to say positive about these, but there is some cons to these. This is the medieval training sword waster. This is the hand and a half training sword. This is the Oboken, which is bigger than the normal Boken. And this is the Trench Hawk trainer and the buckler. Now, the one I'm going to start with, the biggest gripe I have with these is that their point of balance is really crazy. See if I can balance this without having to put the camera down. That would suck. Oh no, something fell. Okay. See, point of balance is around here. I already measured the point of balance for this sword, and it's about 7.5 inches from the hilt here, or from the guard. For a sword like this, which is predominantly used for both cutting and thrusting, you can't have the point of balance that far away. It literally feels like you're swinging a baseball bat around. You don't. The reason why point of balance is so important for that kind of sword is because you need both enough control to put it where you want it to go, but you still need enough force to do damage when you slash. And the bastard sword isn't much better. It's 9.5 inches from the guard, which I think would be about right around here. It's about 9.5 inches from the guard. That is crazy out of balance. The funny thing though is that the one sword where you'd be able to get away with that, the Oboken, it actually has a 7-inch point of balance. So the one sword you want a point of balance further along the blade to give you more cutting power, because you don't really care about thrusting as much with this, although you can thrust with katanas. You have to kind of angle them in. So you want all of that cutting power. You don't get as much cutting power because of the fact that the point of balance is so low. Now, things that have a point of balance that are negligible are the Trainer Hawk, because it's a tomahawk / axe, and those have ridiculous points of balances anyway, because you want all of the weight in the head, because you're not gonna stab with this. I mean, you could if there was like another one of these spikes on the top, but that's not really the point of an axe. It's to bam, smash people around, grab things with the hook, pull them, flip it around, and punch through really tough armor. And the buckler, I've obviously point of balance on a buckler, like you don't need to care about point of balance on a shield, especially one so small. But the buckler does have some issues that I'll come into. The next thing I would really like to highlight is how inflexible these swords are. Okay, so flexibility. this takes a lot to flex, and it doesn't flex very far. Normal steel swords are known for flexing in the last third, especially. The last third on this is just hyper inflexible. So this adds to the problem of the baseball bat swing, where you have a very rigid object that has a very high point of balance, and yet you still don't have the control necessary to develop your techniques. Now, back to the flexing issue. Here is a Rawlings synthetic sword. It's a long sword. It flexes like steel, you know. Very hard to flex down here. Gets easier to flex there. Flexes a lot in the last third of the sword. And this thing's point of balance is 7 inches, but you have to look at the fact that this is such a longer sword, that the 7 inches is right where it really needs to be. This is a very well balanced sword. There's no like awkwardness handling it at all. And I just want to do one more little flexibility thing, because this is a yan. It's a Chinese, or a jian. It's a Chinese sword. This is made by a different company, but this is also very flexible, like the real sword. Its point of balance is very close, like the real sword. You have lots of control. You can still get a lot of percussive force in there. So it's not as if this can't be done with this material. If I were to offer any way to correct this flaw, I would say add in a distal taper. What a distal taper is that the thickness of the blade gets smaller as you go along the edge, as you get closer to the end. These things are uniform thickness the whole way through, and that adds to the... I understand why they did it, because one of their big reasons is they say that these are realistic to the are faithful to the realistic weight. Each one of these swords comes in just a tiny bit under, and the bigger the sword, the larger the margin of that is. So with this sword, it's like 10-15% under realistic weight, whereas this sword, the hand and a half sword, it's actually a full pound under, which, depending on your sources, either half a pound to a pound under. You're looking at about realistic weight, about 3 pounds to 2.75 pounds. So you're looking at 33% to about 20% difference in weight here. It's kind of scary. Especially with how terribly balanced these are. Like, they feel cumbersome in my hands. Okay, so the next topic I'd like to harp on a little bit is the design of the handles. Some of them are very uncomfortable, especially like the hand and a half sword, and the buckler has some things I'm not quite sure why they did. So the hand and a half sword here, this little edge right here is very blocky and tends to rub and pinch your fingers while you're holding it and trying to swing. It gets in the way and collides. It's very uncomfortable, especially with extended use. It does get better if you're wearing gloves, however. Like we train with lacrosse gloves, and it's less noticeable. But if you are just drilling by yourself, this is very uncomfortable. And the other part is down here at the edge. It comes to very sharp points for plastic. They're not prickly, but they're, again, very uncomfortable to hold due to how you hold a sword like this. You're holding on to the edge like this, and all of these points create little pressure areas that the shock from hitting someone presses your hand into further. It's very uncomfortable. So I would say there's no reason for this to really be here, except for the fact that you needed to widen it out to fit the blade. But why couldn't you do that where the guard is? Why not just have this guard fit down to this area here and have a very negligible like fingernail width area here that it rests on, and then tapers down into here. And for this, just round it off, just like this is. It's rounded. It's not uncomfortable at all. It sits in the like cradle of your fingers very well, and you get a lot of control out of it. The points on this and the lateral sides, I don't think I used that correctly, but the fact that it has faces on every single area means that you have occasionally really weird grips when you're trying to apply force in different directions. Okay, and now to go to the buckler. The inside of the buckler, I actually really like the cold steel buckler. It's sturdy. It comes within its historical weight, which is about 2.2 pounds is what this weighs. 2 to 6 pounds is historical weight for bucklers that I found online and resources. So it fits that. However, they do this weird thing with the handles here where they curve it up, which is not very conducive for advanced techniques where you start to hold other weapons in your hand with the bottom of the buckler, like a dagger. For this, you have to cross it, and the only thing basically holding both of these together is your thumb. And obviously this is, you know, a lot bigger, but it's the best handle. It's the thinnest handle that I have, and even without this piece here, it sits like that. So look, it jiggles way too much to actually be of use in advanced techniques. My constructive criticism to fix that is just get rid of these plumes here. The rampage here, just get rid of it. It's not necessary at all to the handling of this thing. I would also suggest that's really thick for a handle. There's a tiny bit of palm swell, but it's still a really thick handle. You can shrink that down. There's no reason to have that thick of a handle without the ability to go to advanced techniques with it. So when I buy a new buckler, I'm going to have to buy when I buy new training weapons, I'm going to have to buy a new buckler as well, even though I really like the cold steel buckler, because the cold steel buckler is very durable. It's taken everything we've thrown at it, just negligible superficial marks on it. This brings me to the cons. The one con is that these are super cheap, especially if you buy off Amazon and not the Cold Steel site. The Cold Steel site lists the Oboken as $49.99, the Medieval Waster Sword as, I think it's $39.99. No, it's actually $45, and the hand and a half sword as $49.99. These are just way too expensive. considering the fact that for that much money you can save up a little bit more and buy a Rawlings synthetic training weapon, which is much better. The cold steel weapons are really cheap if you buy off of the non-official website. So don't buy off of Cold Steel if you actually have to buy these. So if you're getting into this hobby of learning historical swordsmanship and martial arts, super cheap, super cheap, but you pay in that cheapness with the quality. The Warhawk, or the Trench Hawk, this is actually pretty good. Does exactly what you want it to and is durable. And once again, the buckler. This is an okay buy. It's not the best buy you can have, but it's a very good one. Like I mentioned with the problems with the handles, you know, the next step up would be an actual metal buckler, and depending on who you buy that from, that's going to cost a lot, and that can potentially weigh a lot. That was my Cold Steel review analysis. I hope you enjoyed it. Leave your thoughts below, comment, subscribe. Don't really subscribe. I don't do things very much. They're all pretty bad. And thumbs up. Thanks, guys.